What's goody? Hey man, so we are coming to y'all this morning with my top 5 power forward list. If you did not see my top 5 small forward list that came out yesterday, go ahead and watch that. Go ahead and look at that because I explained to you why this video is coming out in the morning. And then tonight you will see top 5 centers. And then tomorrow the season starts and you'll get a video about my predictions and everything like that. A lot of recordings going on. A lot of things going on, trying to get a lot of content out for y'all, trying to grind. So please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff if you would be so kind. Anyways, top 5 power forwards. Got some notes here for this one. This one was one where I came up with a whole lot of names. It was a super loaded position, way more loaded of a position than I expected to. Some notes. Tatum would be here if I was really confident that he would play this season. But for one, I'm not confident in that. And for two, I really don't want him to play for his own sake, for the sake of his own health. So he's not on my list. And then my second note, my last note, I'm keeping Karl-Anthony Towns as a 5 because that is what he played last year. However, I do think he will play more 4 this year because I do believe that Mike Brown will play him alongside Mitchell Robinson more. So I do think he will play more 4. But for right now, what am I hearing? I'm still ranking him as a 5. Honorable mentions. Jalen Johnson, Scotty Barnes, Bam Adebayo, Zion Williamson. All 4 of those guys got some thought from me on this list and were guys that as I was just going down the standings I wrote down. But Scotty and Jalen simply haven't done enough yet. And Bam hasn't done enough recently, especially on the offensive side of the ball, to be on this list. And then finally, Zion doesn't play consistently enough to get real consideration. So while all of these 4 guys got thought and were written down by me, they aren't real honorable mentions and they aren't really close to being on this list like these 2 guys that are my real honorable mentions are. My first honorable mention, Chet Holmgren. This is a phenomenal player, and I think if I were projecting how good he would be higher on this list. But to me, he just hasn't quite done enough yet, even with that impressive playoff run, to prove to me that he should be higher than any of these other guys. I also think that his team winning 68 games, in spite of him only playing 32 due to an injury, could be used as an indictment against him, basically saying he's not that valuable, his team is just dominant because they won 68 games while he missed 50 of them. So you could argue that. My second and last honorable mention for this position is Jaren Jackson Jr. Jaren had a phenomenal year last year. He finished as an all-star, and he was 7th in DPOI voting. He averaged 22, 5, and 2 on 49, 37, 71 splits. But the on-off numbers, my daughter's crying. 1 second. All right, anyways, back to what I was saying about Jaren Jackson. Jaren had a phenomenal year last year, blah, 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 all that. But on-off numbers hated him offensively. But then defensively, they loved him for literally everything besides rebounding. And the fact that cleaning the glass has him as a net negative in points per possession and offensive rebounding percentage, I think is kind of crazy, especially as a near 7-foot big. And then when you look at his second half of the season last year, I would argue that it was underwhelming. And I would say that that's why he went from being the DPOI favorite when Wemby got hurt to finishing 7th in voting at the end of the season. Also, in the playoffs, I would say his numbers have consistently gone down. Last year, he averaged 16, 5, and 1.5 on 38, 27, 85 splits. That is abysmal. I know he's playing against OKC and Chet, but like if anything, that damn near makes me want to put Chet above him because damn, you were playing this bad. I gotta go get my daughter. But we know who Jaren is defensively, and last year for much of the year, you could argue he was the best player for Memphis, which is why I still have him above Chet. So he did come close to making the final cut, but for now, I ultimately would just rather have these other 5 guys above him. So Jaren Jackson Jr., while you came close, you didn't make my cut, unfortunately. All right, so now it is time to officially get into my top 5, starting with my number 5, Pascal Siakam, baby. I'm a Pascal Siakam fan, so some of this could be biased. You could very well argue that, but what he consistently does for his teams to be a playoff team, combined with what he did in that playoff run last year, is what got him on this list for me. He averaged 27 and 4 on 52, 39, 73 splits. Mind you, this man is one of the best transition playmakers in the league and is the most consistent source of half-court offense for the Pacers. The on-off numbers love him as he's in the 70s. The on-off numbers love him. He's in the 97th percentile for on-off differential in the NBA. In the playoffs, he averaged 26 and 3 with 2 stocks on 51, 43, 71 splits. And in a lot of those playoff games last year, if you were really watching, you kind of peeped that he looked like the best player for the Pacers, which is why he won the Conference Finals MVP. And that's why there was a real conversation that if the Pacers had won that Finals, depending on how that Game 7 would have looked for Halliburton, that Finals MVP, you could argue, would have been his. With Halliburton being out this year, bro, I think Pascal Siakam has a huge opportunity as the number 1 solidified guy on his team this year to move up this list. All I think he really has to do is just keep the Pacers as a competent, solid playoff play-in team, And I think that he very well can do that in order to, and I think if he can just do that, which I think he can do, he will get into most people's eyes and be like, oh yeah, this guy is very well a top 5 power forward. This guy is better than I've been giving him credit for. Number 4. And y'all are about to be mad about this one, boy. It's Evan Mobley. Listen, like I said, some of y'all are about to be so mad at me for this one, but I'll tell you the reasoning that I have him at 4 and not at 3 or anything higher when I talk about my number 3 guy. But for right now, let's just focus on Mobley and hyping him up. He averaged 18, 9, and 3 on 55, 37, 72 splits with 1.5 blocks and a steal per game. He won the DPOY last year, was obviously all defensive first team. He finished 10th in MVP voting. And he made all NBA second team. The on-off numbers, they like Evan Mobley, but they didn't really love him. He was like 76 percentile in on-off differential, and like his on-off numbers were like kind of like they were like a tan, like a color where it's like he was mediocre for like every single percentile. He wasn't really great at a lot of stuff, and he wasn't really terrible at a lot of like the on-off numbers. So he was just kind of like in the middle with those on-off numbers. And I think a lot of that is just because Cleveland has those units where they'll mix and match 2 of their best 4 guys, and I think because of that, it just allows them to have such steady rotations that their on-off numbers are never going to really look too crazy. So I didn't really take that as an indictment against Evan Mobley, but in the playoffs is kind of where the indictment came across Evan Mobley, because his averages went down to 17, 8, and 1.5, and while his splits did go up to 59, 45, 84, his stocks went down with 1 steal and 1 block a game. And last year, I think he had an offensive jump, and I do genuinely believe another one's coming this year. And I think if he has a big enough offensive jump and just continues to be the same player defensively, he could very well jump up 2 spots on this list. But I think his lack of shooting, his team's just lack of trust in him offensively, is I think in the playoffs there was just so many games where it was obvious that either just for scheming issues or lack of trust in him offensively, he was finishing games with like 11 shots, 13 shots, and maybe that's some aggressiveness issues, maybe that's bad scheming, maybe that's just his team not trusting him. I don't know what that is, so I guess it's irresponsible for me to just immediately go and say his team doesn't trust him, but that's what it looked like to me. So I think those are the things right now that are holding him back from being number 3 for me. And let me just go ahead and tell you who my number 3 guy is. I just accidentally kicked the dog. Sorry, Pierre. It's Paolo Banchero. And I have him ahead of Evan Mobley for a few reasons, and I honestly think that all of them are pretty valid. And I don't think that like any of these reasons are too related to my own bias or me being a bigger Paolo fan than I am an Evan Mobley guy. First, I value what Paolo has done as the first option and the franchise player on his team more than what Emob has done as like the second best player, and even when he was younger, he wasn't even the second best player on his team. Whereas Paolo kind of came right in and was expected to be the best guy. I mean, he might have had a few months where he was the second best guy, but he really came in as the first overall pick, and they were like, yeah, you need to be our best guy like right now. And I don't think he ever had the luxury of not being the best. And I think in the playoffs, he proved that he never had that luxury, and he proved in the playoffs he didn't need it. He proved that he can take his team up another notch and carry his team further than what the public thought he could get them to. In his first playoff run, he took Cleveland to 7 games, a 50-win Cleveland team in his second year in the league, took Cleveland to 7 games in a playoff series where and that's going against Evan Mobley. And in that playoff series, he averaged 27, 9, and 4, mind you. This is a second-year player. It's his first ever playoff series, and he's doing that against a 50-win team with the Defensive Player of the Year perennial candidate every single year guarding him. And his only help was Franz Wagner, and Franz Wagner, I think, averaged 15 in that series. Anyways, last year, Paolo averaged 26, 7.5, and 5, and he would have been All-Star and NBA and All-NBA had he played enough games, but he missed too many games because of that oblique injury. In the playoffs, his averages went up to 29, 8, and 4 on 43, 44, 66 splits, so his splits went down a bit. He's the best player on a playoff team, on a team that is a playoff team consistently when healthy, and he's doing all of this without any consistent spacing, without any consistent point guard play around him. And I think without him, the biggest thing for me is that without him, the Magic are a bottom 5 seed in the East every single year. At the very best, they're a end of the lottery team every single year. Whereas with Mobley and the Cavs, if you take him off that team, that's still a top 6 seed in the East. That's still a playoff team. And I think ultimately when it comes to stuff like that, that's not the only thing I take into consideration. But when it comes to, the difference between my 4th guy and my 3rd guy, and it's a really super tight difference, I'm going to take that into consideration when you're the first option versus the second one. And when that first option has outperformed that other guy in a playoff series against each other. That's just stuff you have to weigh. For me personally, so that's why I'm going to take Paolo Banchero over Evan Mobley, and I think as of right now today, It's solidified for me. Number 2 for me is Anthony Davis. And these last two guys, I don't have much to say because I don't think I should have much to say. I feel like people are forgetting about Anthony Davis right now, and I think he's about to have a super, super good and impressive season. I think when he's healthy, he's a borderline top 10 player always, and he's a borderline top 3 defensive player in the league always when he's healthy. And last year, in a crazy year where he gets traded, where he gets hurt after getting traded, there's all these expectations on him. You don't know what's going to happen with the team. Kyrie gets hurt and everything like that and blah, blah, blah. He still puts up 25, 11, and 3 on 51, 28, 77 splits. We'll see what happens this year with Cooper Flagg, and then next year when they have Cooper Flagg and a healthy Kyrie Irving, hopefully. I think that's going to be a super good team, and I think a big part of that is going to be Anthony Davis. And I just think you have to remember he's one of the best two-way players in the league when he's healthy. He's like top 10 on one side of the ball, or he's a top 10 player in the league pretty much always when he's healthy. And I just feel like because of the Luka trade and because of his injuries and because of all the other talent that's emerging in the league, people are kind of forgetting about the guys like Anthony Davis. And I'm not going to be one of those guys that forgets about Anthony Davis. And then number 2 is Giannis. Number 1 is Giannis. Because obviously. Let me know what y'all list is. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for watching as always. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell a friend to tell a friend, man. Share the video around. Do everything like that. Do all that good stuff. And no matter what, keep God first as always, all right? Thank you for watching. Like I said, peace out. I love y'all. Bye. Bye.